Welcome back to Don't Be Shy, True Crime. My name is Shy, and this is part 2 of the Anthonette Cayedito disappearance. In part 1, we talked about Anthonette's background and how she cared for her sisters and was parentified starting at a very young age. We also talked about the original timeline that Penny gave police, as well as a 1991 sighting of Anthonette that is strongly believed to be her. This section includes Penny Cayedito's 1994 interview with the FBI, as well as what Anthonette's now adult sister Sadie says happened that night. This version of events is now considered to be the actual timeline. Most of the information I'm about to discuss in this section comes from the 4-part series on journalist Crystal Gutierrez's YouTube channel, titled Disappeared into Darkness: The Disappearance of Anthonette Cayedito. In this documentary, Anthonette's sister Sadie, who was 7 at the time, says that on April 5, 1986, as Penny was getting ready to go out and preparing to leave for the night, Emo showed up and brought Anthonette flowers and a gift. The gift was a small silver necklace with a turquoise stone on the inside. I feel like I need to stress again that Anthonette was only 9 years old at the time, and this was an overly grown man giving her flowers and a gift. As I previously mentioned, 4 days after the disappearance on April 10, 1986, is when Penny finally tells detectives that Emo had given Anthonette flowers 3 times leading up to her disappearance. She failed to even mention this until another family member brought it up in front of the police. Sadie then goes on to say that as Penny was in the back of the house, Emo was in the front of the house with the girls and was talking to Anthonette and had her sit on his lap. Sadie remembers that while Anthonette was seated on Emo's lap, Anthonette seemed scared. Sadie then grabbed Anthonette off of Emo's lap and then they went into her room. Sadie then explains that Penny was known for throwing frequent parties at the house, and whenever this happened, Anthonette would take on the role of mother hen and take Wendy and Sadie to another room in order to keep them out of that environment and to protect them. After Penny returned home from the bar, all 3 girls and Penny were in Penny's room, where Anthonette and Penny shared Penny's bed, and Wendy and Sadie made a makeshift bed on the floor next to Penny's bed. Although the home was large and each girl had their own room, Sadie says that they always wanted to sleep in their mom's room. Anthonette and Penny stayed up playing cards while Wendy and Sadie had to go to sleep, which Sadie says her and Wendy were not happy about. Sadie also says that Penny and Anthonette staying up to play cards was not a normal occurrence for them. It's important to remember that this is not the account that Penny originally gave detectives. Remember that on April 6th, the same day Anthonette went missing, Penny told detectives that the last time she saw her daughter was at 3 a.m. and she was asleep, and that when she woke up at 7 a.m., Anthonette was gone. On April 11th, 1986, Penny told police that she put Wendy and Sadie to bed, and that Anthonette went to bed with me in my room. When I woke up, she was no longer in my room. My first thought was that she had gone into one of the other girls' bedrooms. Sadie then goes on to say that she did hear the first knock, at which point she heard a man asking to be let in, and that Penny told the girls to ignore it. Anthonette was still in the room when this knock occurred. Sadie does not think a second knock happened that night, nor does she remember a second knock happening. Wendy is the one who went to investigators with the second knock story 5 years later when she was 10. But Sadie definitely does not remember a second knock. In fact, Penny never mentioned a second knock until 1994 when she was interviewed by the FBI, and this is when she significantly changed her story. Here is a portion of that FBI interview and what Penny Cayedito said happened that night. On March 1st, 1994, almost 8 years after her daughter's disappearance, she now says verbatim, "I told Anthonette to go ahead and answer it. I laid there for a period of time, maybe 30 minutes, and Anthonette never came back. I got up to see where she was, but I couldn't find her." Penny said that the knock occurred between 3:30 a.m. and 4:30 a.m., and that when she got up 30 minutes later, it was just getting light out. This is different from her initial statement when she said she woke up and found Anthonette missing. Once Penny was confronted by the FBI and was told that they had information that she was directly implicated, Penny Cayedito said, "What if I told you Emo and I did this? Would we both go to prison?" Here is part of a direct statement from the FBI while interviewing Penny. Cayedito stated that she and Emo got together on a plan prior to her daughter's disappearance. Cayedito advised that Emo and Ron had come over. She remarked to Emo that her oldest daughter was getting to be a problem and she wanted a better life for her. Cayedito advised that Emo then told her that he would be the person that would take Anthonette. Cayedito stated she wanted to know where. She was told it was better if she did not know. Cayedito stated soon thereafter it started getting light out, and at that time she became concerned for Anthonette and had second thoughts regarding her disappearance. Penny confirmed that Emo came by her home the night before Anthonette disappeared, at which point she advised the FBI that he handed 2 roses to Anthonette on this occasion. Penny stated that she did try to find Anthonette after she went missing, but eventually backed out of doing so. There are reports that say that Penny was also given a polygraph test when she was questioned by the FBI. Sadie, who was 16 in 1994, did accompany her mom that day to the FBI office where she waited outside. Penny told Sadie that the reason they were there was because the FBI wanted to interview her again about Emo and Ron. Penny made no mention of herself having to take a polygraph test, but she did tell Sadie that Ron and Emo had failed a polygraph test miserably. This was later determined to be a lie, however, as there is no evidence of either man having failed a polygraph. In regards to why Penny was never charged after her 1994 FBI interview, Juan Reyes, a former Gallup detective who investigated the case, said that when the FBI report was turned over to the Gallup Police Department, they did not include the 1994 interview in which Penny basically confessed. This detective said that not ever seeing the FBI confession interview and not being able to come up with the motive are all reasons why he never formally charged her. It seems as if the police just stopped investigating because they couldn't come up with the motive. Had the police questioned Penny even more, who knows? Maybe she would have cracked even more and gone into more detail about her daughter's disappearance. But then again, sometimes confessions mean nothing if there is no evidence to go along with it. To me, this sounds like a massive misstep by law enforcement. This just goes to show how Black, brown, and indigenous children are constantly looked over. I know some of this information may be confusing, but that's because it is. With so many changed stories, possible lies, and different memories, things tend to get a bit confusing. I will not be giving my personal opinion in regards to this case, nor will I be saying who I think is responsible, as I do not think it is my place to do so. None of this information is to bash anybody, and I am only presenting facts and information that is all publicly available. Given what Sadie says happened that night, as well as Penny's 1994 interview, I think it's safe to assume that the most common theory regarding this case is that Penny Cayedito did indeed have something to do with her daughter's disappearance. With that being said, I think it's still important to go over other theories in regards to this case. I will be going over some more information that points directly towards Penny Cayedito, as well as briefly going over some other theories. Other theories in this case include runaway, homicide, and human trafficking. The runaway theory is often quickly dismissed because of who Anthonette was as a person. She was the oldest sibling and a mother hen who dressed, fed, and often clothed her 2 younger sisters. She would not have left them. She was known for protecting her 2 sisters while her mother threw parties at the house. In Anthonette's mind, if she left, then who would protect them? She loved her siblings so much that she would have made some type of contact with either Sadie or Wendy within the past 39 years. The fact that Anthonette was still in her pajamas and did not take anything with her from the home, also points away from the runaway theory. A weird little coincidence about this case is that Anthonette had a 25-year-old mentally disabled paternal aunt named Luisa Estrada, who disappeared 3 years after her niece, in September of 1989. Luisa went missing from Gallup and was later found safe and alive 1 month later in Mexico, after which she was later returned home. I couldn't find much information on this strange coincidence, but could this have something to do with Anthonette? Could Anthonette have been taken to Mexico as well? Although Luisa was later found safe shortly after she disappeared, I still find it strange that two family members from the same family could disappear in such close date ranges to one another. Penny was involved in drugs, alcohol, and prostitution, and it is rumored, but not a fact, that Penny bought a sports car the week of Anthonette's disappearance. So did drugs play a role in Anthonette's disappearance? Sadie has said that right before the disappearance, their house was raided by police and was destroyed in the process. Could the police have been looking for drugs? When researching this case, I came across an important detail. The Cayeditos had a screen door that was directly in front of their regular front door. So in other words, they had two doors. Knowing this suggests that Anthonette either knew or recognized her abductor, because once she opened the door and didn't recognize the person, why would she then proceed to unlatch the screen door for them? Another thing to consider is there have been a lot of cases of kidnappers abducting children from their homes in the middle of the night, but by sneaking in to do so. Most abductors are not knocking on the door at 3 a.m. to abduct a child. Most people are asleep at that hour with parents or other caregivers at home. And even if you did do this, wouldn't you assume that a parent would answer the door? How did the abductor know that Anthonette would answer the door? How did they know she was awake? This makes me think that the kidnapper knew for sure that Anthonette would be the one to answer the door. Sadie said that Penny was very strict and adamant about the kids not answering the door, but for some reason Anthonette was allowed to that night. If we go back to Wendy's story that she told police when she was 10, she said she heard a man call out that it was Uncle Joe and to answer the door. The girls actually did have an Uncle Joe who was married to Penny's sister, who was questioned by law enforcement and cleared of any involvement. How did the abductor know to use the name Uncle Joe? Joe was a common name back then, especially used on reservations and by native people. It was also not uncommon to call family friends aunt or uncle. But could it be that the abductor knew that Anthonette had an Uncle Joe and knew to use that name in order to get her to answer the door? Or was it just pure luck since Uncle Joe was such a common name? Wendy said that she did not recognize the two men that snatched Anthonette, but wouldn't she recognize Emo, especially since he was a constant presence at the home? Was the Uncle Joe man told to use that particular name in order to get Anthonette to open the door? In regards to the phone call, I do believe it was Anthonette, but it is completely possible it was a prank. Penny claimed that the phone call was her daughter due to the pronunciation of her last name. But could this phone call have been staged in order to throw off the investigation, or to lead law enforcement to the Albuquerque area instead? Was Penny saying she believed the phone call was Anthonette simply a mother's delusion and her wanting to believe it was Anthonette? When it comes to the diner sighting, most people take this sighting as fact, but could it just have been that the waitress was enmeshed with the case and wanted to be involved in it? There are also some people who believe that Wendy's memory 5 years later about the second knock was actually implanted by her mother, but to this day, Wendy has stuck to her story and swears that a second knock did occur. In 1991, Anthonette's case was featured on the show Unsolved Mysteries for their 5th season. This episode actually featured Penny and a local Native American medicine woman, who Penny contacted in order to perform a crystal ritual. In the episode, the medicine woman spoke in her native tongue and relayed to Penny that Anthonette may have a child at that point in time. There are some theories that suggest that Penny may have actually already known this. When doing research on this case, I also came across some comments from people who claim to speak Navajo that said during the Unsolved Mysteries episode Penny was incorrectly translating what the medicine woman was saying, and that at one point the medicine woman actually says to Penny, "You know where she is." I am unsure about this, however, because I do not speak Navajo. The medicine woman also goes on to say that Anthonette was still alive, but she was being held against her will by threats of violence somewhere in the Southwest. Penny died in April of 1999, but investigators never cleared her of any wrongdoing in her daughter's case. Law enforcement was so suspicious of her that they decided to pay her a visit on her deathbed. No last-minute confession came from that, however. In 2016, authorities stated that they wholeheartedly believed that Penny Cayedito knew more than she let on, and let it be known that she did in fact fail a lie detector test. Investigators also believe that Anthonette may be deceased and that Penny allowed her to be taken by emo. After Anthonette disappeared, her two sisters' lives changed forever. In an interview with the Albuquerque Journal, Wendy is quoted as saying, "It just broke my whole family up. It was a very dark and dysfunctional time." She later revealed in the article that she and her mother could barely talk about Anthonette without crying or getting intoxicated with drugs and alcohol. That's how we coped with the pain, to numb it, not to forget about it, but to put it on the shelf, you know? The hurt of losing her sister led Wendy into a life of drug addiction, alcoholism, and gang affiliation, as well as acquiring a criminal record. This all lasted up until her young adulthood. Her lifestyle eventually led to her losing custody of her children, but around 2007, Wendy was able to turn her life around. She says, "I went into rehab. I struggled to get my kids back, struggled to get away from the old person I was, to break the cycle I was raised up in, and to get far away from here, and I did it." In the article, Wendy says that her memories of Anthonette are vague, but she is forever frozen in time. At age 9, a little girl with a jumble of teeth, soft brown eyes, and a caregiver's heart. She further stated that, "I'm not going to accept that she's dead. I need proof." After Anthonette went missing, Penny tried to unalive herself, which in turn led to Sadie going to live with her dad while Wendy remained at home with Penny. In 2022, Sadie was interviewed by KOAT-TV, where she publicly delivered a message for Anthonette. "She's safe. She has a family that loves her. She has sisters. We haven't given up. We all wonder and often think about her and what she's doing. Does she have kids? What kind of life is she living?" Sadly, there are reports that say Sadie and Wendy are now estranged and no longer have a relationship with one another. Penny Cayedito spent many more years struggling with addiction and even had to be institutionalized a few times. On April 18, 1999, at the age of 46, Penny died from liver cirrhosis and cardiac issues, without ever truly revealing exactly what happened to Anthonette or where she was. So what happened to Anthonette Cayedito on that fateful spring day? 39 years later, and there still has not been an arrest or a concrete answer. This case breaks my heart. I am trying to imagine what was going through little Anthonette's mind while all of this was happening. She had no idea what was about to happen. Did she know who was responsible? She never got to go on her first date, experience her first kiss. She never got to attend prom or experience the joys of being a carefree teenager, where life is filled with rookie mistakes, sleepovers, college plans, and mischievous adventures. Anthonette sounded like she was truly a kind, responsible, compassionate little girl who had a rough start in life. Had she been protected the way she should have been, who knows where she would have been today. Anthonette Christine Cayedito was 9 years old at the time of her disappearance. She would now be 48 years old. Anthonette was 4 feet 7 inches tall and weighed 55 pounds at the time of her disappearance. She was biracial, with some sources stating Native American and white, while others saying Native American and Hispanic. She had brown hair, brown eyes, moles on her right cheek, nose, back, both hands, and on her right knee. She also had scars on one of her knees and on her lip. Both ears were pierced, and she was last seen on April 6, 1986, in a knee-length pink nightgown. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Anthonette Cayedito, please call the Gallup, New Mexico Police Department at 505-863-9365.